You get a demand letter from a counterparty in a litigation scenario, and you quickly go put a bunch of facts into ChatGPT, and it's non-enterprise software, it's shared. You probably blow privilege, and the counterparty can probably say, "Hey, give me your ChatGPT log," right? And there's some practical difficulties to that, but like nonetheless, you don't want to be in that scenario. And if you put it into ChatGPT, come up with a high quality summary, and then send it to your lawyer, the counterparty can probably get the summary. So if it has damning information in it, you've just shot yourself in the foot, right? So be really careful with that. That's sort of cutting edge area of the law that's evolving daily.
Interesting.
Yep.
So just as an example, you said I received something.
I see you getting nervous now, Nick. Is this? Go ahead and use
Yeah.
your person.
Right. Yeah.
Oddly
So
specific example you just gave there, Nick.
I received something that I need to give to my attorney to respond to. And so I go into ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I did this thing wrong. How do I cover up for it? Give me some arguments." And I send that over to my attorney. That's discovered. And then that chat history of me essentially admitting guilt to ChatGPT becomes evidence in this argument. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's right. That's right. Yep. And so,
Oops.
and think about the practical implications of that. And we're seeing this now too. If you like that pro football, this is an extreme example, but there was a former pro football player, I think he's a football player, killed his wife. And then the next day,
Yeah.
ChatGPT, like how to get rid of a body. Now that's criminal. That's obviously different, but same concept, right?
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by One Accord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
No, I live in Windermere, Florida, right on the backside of Walt Disney World here in golf course country, Central Florida, Orlando. I try not to say Orlando because everybody always pictures like I Drive, and my partner Kevin always jokes about the play, the Book of Mormon, where they sing that song Orlando. But here I am in Orlando, in Windermere. It's a great place to live.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And I'm going to take first shot. Is it Pacifici?
It's Pacifici, but call me whatever you want. Yeah, my late grandfather actually decided after like 70 years of us struggling with it, because he had 8 brothers and sisters, and they all changed it to Pacific when they emigrated from Italy to make it simple. Okay. And he's like, I'm staying with Pacifici. But like 3 years before he passed, a couple years ago, he decided it was Pacifici. And so we're like, dude, we've been struggling with this for 50 years now. We're not gonna update it now, but here we are. Yep.
Here we are. Well, and here we are. So like I've been following you on X for a while. It's cool to connect in person, virtually, have a real conversation.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the thing that I've been, I'd say, sharing ideas with you on, although privately, just watching you in the feed, is everything that's going on in AI and small business.
Yeah.
And just note, like, this isn't new for you. You've got blog posts that go back a couple of years ago now, looking at how generative AI is going to serve small businesses and the evolution from there to here. Let's kick off there.
Yeah,
I know that
everybody wants to talk about AI. I wrote a post in 2023 when ChatGPT first sort of, emerged, and I hyperbolically said, it's going to burn down the legal profession. And I got, a ton of pushback from lawyers. They were super mad at me, but it went ultra viral, and I actually got interviewed by NBC Nightly News by their production team. They almost put me on the Nightly. They didn't put me on, but that was close. But was on like a bunch of local news channels around the country talking about AI in 2023. So everybody was like, "Man, this guy's the legal expert in AI." I'm like, "No, I'm not." In fact, I'm the guy in our firm. Anytime I have a tech issue, I call Kevin, and he says, "Eric, did you try restarting it?" So. But if you're not keeping up, if you're not using this, if you're not paying attention, you're falling behind already. And I've sort of come around to the conclusion that, like, how on earth do we keep up with AI, right? How do you, Nick, in your business, One Accord, or us in S&B Law Group, or Bob in an HVAC business, keep up with the advances in AI? And the only conclusion that I can draw is we got to turn over the keys to AI, and AI has got to tell us as it advances what it can do and how it can be implemented across marketing, sales, operations, quality control, administrative, recruiting. What are the capabilities, and how do we use it? How do we use it to elevate our brand positioning? I mean, even if you're a doggy daycare. I was having this debate with one of my really good friends. He owns a bunch of businesses and sort of going down the line in his 10 plus businesses and saying like which ones, are most susceptible to AI, everything from video production to like a doggy daycare. My conclusion is all of them, right? Because, AI is not going to watch the dogs. Nobody is going to turn their dogs over to an Amazon style, kiosk where the
Put
robots
it
are
on a
watching the
conveyor belt
dogs.
and watch it go down to their cage.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
walk into
not
one of those
happening.
like vending stores in the mall, and there's no people, and the door opens, and one person goes at a time, and they know what you have, and you pay that. That's not happening with dogs anytime soon, or daycare centers, right? But if your daycare center isn't leaning into AI for SEO, for brand development, for administrative stuff, for billing, for all the quality stuff on the back end, you're gonna get crushed by your neighboring business, and over time customers are going to migrate in that direction, especially as it pertains to like building a brand for your business locally with
That's right.
SEO and the like. So it's a fascinating time to be in business, and a little bit overwhelming, man. Are you feeling that sort of like,
It's
how do I
yeah,
keep up anxiety?
it's I'd say it's a lot overwhelming and a little bit fascinating if I was going to flip that on its head. You asked the question, how do you keep up with the developments or the advancements? In my back of my mind, it's like nights and weekends. I'm spending, call it Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, if that were only it, running the business. And then I'm spending Monday through Friday from 5 to 9 and Saturdays and Sundays trying to go up the curve on Claude, and let's pick a Perplexity Computers, a new one that I'm like, oh, shiny object. Let's go chase that one. But here, let me pause. And for our listeners, for our audience, let's let them get to know you, because I've been following you for a while, so I know who you are and what you're about. But who's Eric? Who's SMB Law Group? What do you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Nick. This is fun. I love having the chance to get to know you. We're SMB Law Group. We're a boutique transactional law firm. We started 3.5 years ago. We'll be 4 years old in May. We're all former Big Law trained, top 14 educated attorneys that sort of focus on the lower middle market now and helping people buy and sell businesses. We do general corporate as well. Very entrepreneur, independent sponsors, search fund friendly. The model's been built around sort of providing higher quality legal services to people in the lower middle market. And we've had a great couple of years. Last year, we were nominated by the Financial Times as one of the most innovative law firms of 2025.
Yeah,
We won
congratulations.
some different awards. Thank you, around innovation. And last year we closed 120 some odd lower middle market businesses. Leaders in lower middle market M&A in the country do about 200 to 300 deals per year.
You did 120 deals last year.
123, I think, is the total count. Yeah, and so we've closed 350 plus transactions in 3 and 4 years in May. Kirkland, my prior firm, Goodwin Proctor and Cooley do about 200 to 300 lower middle market competitive deals per year. So we're on pace, hopefully, to pass them and hopefully be the number one lower middle market law firm in the country at some point in the next decade.
Let's
If
go,
things
man.
continue
So
on this trajectory.
define lower middle market. It depends on what market you're in. Lower middle market means different numbers. So for you,
Yeah,
what that
I
mean?
just think sub $50 million enterprise value, and you could say
Yeah.
5 to 50, but I don't know, Main Street versus lower middle market or lower middle market, whatever you want to call it. We just think sub $50 million businesses. There are lots of great law firms that will service people north of those figures. That's sort of where real M&A lawyers live. But up until a few years ago, there really weren't any meaningful national players that wanted to do sub $25 million A in any meaningful way. They'll take the deal, but they don't really want it. They've got 10 transactions going, and yours is the 10th most important. That's not really a good place to be if it's the most important transaction of your life.
Isn't that right? And not, the most important, most likely the first and only time the entrepreneur founder is going to go through a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Yep.
How about this? Just in your 123 deals, how many of those just off the cuff were serial entrepreneurs, folks that it was their second, third, whatever number transaction?
Yeah, a good number of them, right? I don't know the specific number, but more than you would think, right? There's a class of people that are sort of understanding the business buying opportunity, and for better or worse, right? Like it's gotten more competitive, and there's, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's hard, but there's definitely a group of individuals now that are, well educated and experienced and want to go buy these businesses, and they're doing them I say a mile to the starting line, an inch to the second one, right? They take a while to sort of do the first one, but
that's good framing.
if they do what they do is they do the first one and then they do the second one really fast, 6, 9, 12 months. And then at like the 2-year mark, they go, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And it'll be a few years before I do another one. Yeah, that's sort of the trend that we see.
So our kind of ideal client, our ICP, I call him Bob, and he's in that boomer generation, call it 58 to 65, started the business 25, 30, 40 years ago, owner operator, grown it to some number that's really respectable. Maybe it's a $50 million, $75 million top line. So we're in the, EV, depending on the industry, could be 25 to 100 million EV. But these guys, this guy, Bob, it's the only thing he's done. He started machining parts for Boeing out here in the Pacific Northwest. Boeing used to build all their stuff out here. Bob used to build stuff for Boeing, and then maybe diversified a little bit, but he's got concentration risk still in one, major customer. That's Boeing. He's been running his business on his own. He's got maybe a general manager or, some leads, but nobody that's really in that executive level management, nobody that could step in for him as CEO. Kids don't want the business, right? This is a story that is pervasive across America. That's our ICP. Sounds to me like you've got the buy side too. Are you working with a lot of buyers and you're representing acquisitions?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say we have an ICP because it's anybody who's doing M&A that's sub $50 million. We're happy to work with. 80 to 85% of those people are on the buy side, though. They're on the other side of the table from Bob. So we've sort of become experts in how do you approach Bob diplomatically, right? How do you make sure that how do we approach Bob's counsel diplomatically? Because oftentimes they're not even experienced M&A lawyers. They've been sort of working with Bob for 20 or 30 years.
Yes. And that's atop our list of advice. You are not going to hire your uncle or your cousin Joe to represent you in this transaction, Bob. Not happening.
Yeah. And they still do, right? And Uncle Joe, because Bob, Bob likes you, Nick, but he doesn't trust you like he does, his Uncle Joe. So he's going to go to Uncle Joe. Yeah. He's going to go to Uncle Joe and say, hey man, I'm selling my business. Can you do this? And what do you think Uncle Joe's going to say? You think he's going to say, no, Bob, I'm not qualified to do this. Uncle Joe hasn't told anybody in 30 years that there's something he doesn't know how to do, right?
Yeah.
He's going to take the deal and he's going to bungle the hell out of it, especially if he is overzealous. If he really cares about Bob and it's somebody who's close to him, he's going to want Bob he's going to treat it like it's Bob's Super Bowl, which is a really difficult thing when you don't know the terms, you don't know the market, you don't know the process, you don't know the diplomacy. And then we're on the other side having to tell Uncle Joe that, hey dude, like, you can't have reps expire at closing. You can't carve up the non-compete like this. Oftentimes our buyers too are SBA 7A buyers, for the sub $10 million stuff. And there's a well-worn, list of rules that the SBA requires to fund. And I have to go, hey, as much as maybe we could do that if we were batshit crazy and wanted to go along with it and really wanted the business, no buyer's even going to be able to get debt on those terms. But I can't say that, right? And I definitely can't say that in front of Bob because Bob's going to, who are you, Eric? You're 39 years old. I'm 70. I've been making, a 25 to $75 million EV business that you mentioned that has probably he's bringing home, several $1 million, if not more per year for decades, right? You think that guy cares what I think? You think he's super interested in being educated on how things work? You think people around him have been, he's been deferential to people around him after you've got a net worth of tens of millions of dollars for decades? Absolutely not. That is a commanding individual, whether it's justified or not. So you've got to be really careful about that.
Hey, everybody. Nick Anderson here, CEO of One Accord. Thank you for tuning in to the Value Factory. I hope you're getting value from this episode. Listen, one of the ways that we partner with CEOs is using our system called Oasis, the One Accord system, our proprietary business operating system that is designed to shift your leadership team from reactive firefighting to focused execution. We provide the framework to align your vision with your strategy, ensuring sustainable growth and clarity at every level of your organization. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or the bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. Very, very insightful. Really good. So if most of my clients are Bob and we are working with them to prep them for exit, I am working with Bob to achieve a particular outcome, which is you get paid all cash, no earnout, no stick around, clean sale. If you're representing buyers on the other side, what do you need to see in this business to say to your client, yeah, you can do this without an earnout. You can do this without keeping Bob around?
Well, the financial terms as lawyers, like we really should stay out of that, right? We should not be telling our client what to pay. We should not be telling our client how to pay. If there are individual risks that we identify as we're doing diligence, and if they've got some sort of litigation or some sort of compliance problem or whatever, then yeah, we could say, hey, maybe you take some portion of the purchase price and you allocate it to that as a special escrow or a line item indemnification, or maybe you rethink that in light of the Q of E findings or whatever. But I'm not. I'm trying not to do that, right? And what I tell the buyers is, the price and all that stuff's really going to come down to the leverage. How high quality is this business, and what does the line of buyers look like? What type of job has the broker done in sort of creating a market for the business? And if there's a market for the business, you may be bidding without a promissory note or with a small escrow. But once you get up into like $25 million plus purchase price land, there's a pretty well-worn path, 10% escrow, 10 to 20% escrow, so what we're always trying to do is make sure the buyer's in the fairway with how they're thinking about things, make sure the purchase agreement's in the fairway, right? Whether it's your, side of the field or it's our side of the field, we're trying to make sure it's at least in the fairway. I can go to a buyer and say, hey, dude, like Bob really wants, a big escrow and his lawyer is pushing really hard for a big escrow. Market for that is 10 to 20%. Those are defensible positions that I can cite in secondary sources, and I can cite it for Bob's attorney too. So I could say, hey, dude, like what you're asking for is not in the fairway. And here's a bunch of references to sort of show you that. Because I think lawyers sort of get into, we get into trouble if we don't educate a client on what the terms are, and sort of where those terms fall. And if we're advocating for terms that are, I would say, even if you're advocating for something that's too aggressive, right? The obvious scenario is, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I take an M&A deal and it's complicated because they are. And I mistakenly tell my clients, okay, to take something that's not market, and I don't educate him on that. You get into, risk territory for you, but reputationally, whatever, or liability wise. But even if I say, hey, let's swing for the fences, dude. Let's go for 5 years of uncapped indemnification. Let's go nuts. And it kills the deal. I think that's not a place you want to find yourself in as an attorney either. So that's sort of how I think about the negotiation.
Yeah, it's good. Good nuance, good balance. Okay, so now if I tell a story to then bring it back to something, just bear with me here. I'm listening to some podcast. I want to say it was Rogan interviewing a medical professional. And the story is, more people are walking into a doctor's office having researched whatever condition they think they have, researching all the symptoms, and coming into the doctor saying, here's everything that I know now, which go back in time 5 years ago. And folks are walking into the doctor saying, hey, doc, I got this thing going on, diagnose me. In your profession, are you seeing that show up where your clients are coming in with a bank of chat GPT notes that they think they know, for lack of a better term, they think they know how to do your job and that AI can replace you as the attorney? That's where I'm going with this.
Well, yes. I mean, for sure. Everybody's using it now in lieu of Google. I think it's been a massive sort of substitution. And I think Google's seen it. I hate those AI Google results, because when I go to Google, I go to Google because I want Google, right? And then I get that AI Google overlay. And I'm like, if I wanted that, I would have gone to ChatGPT if I wanted AI mode. So it's sort of like they're different, almost different purposes at this point. But yeah, they're coming to us. They're sending us the outputs, which, by the way, be careful with that. If you get a demand letter from a counterparty in a litigation scenario, and you quickly go put a bunch of facts into ChatGPT, and it's non-enterprise software, it's shared, you probably blow privilege and the counterparty can probably say, hey, give me your ChatGPT log, right? And there's some practical difficulties to that, but like nonetheless, you don't want to be in that scenario. And if you put it into ChatGPT, come up with a high quality summary and then send it to your lawyer, the counterparty can probably get the summary. So if it has damning information in it, you've just shot yourself in the foot, right? So be really careful with that. That's sort of cutting edge area of the law that's evolving daily.
Interesting.
Yep.
So just as an example, you said I received something.
I see you getting nervous now, Nick. Is this, go ahead and use your person.
Right. Yeah.
Oddly specific example you just gave there, Nick.
I received something that I need to give to my attorney to respond to. And so I go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I did this thing wrong. How do I cover up for it? Give me some arguments. And I send that over to my attorney. That's discovered. And then that chat history of me essentially admitting guilt to ChatGPT becomes evidence in this argument. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
That's right. That's right. Yep. And so,
oops.
And think about the practical implications of that. And we're seeing this now too. If you like that pro football, this is an extreme example, but there was a former pro football player, I think he's a football player, killed his wife. And then the next day, ChatGPT, like how to get rid of a body. Now that's criminal. That's obviously different, but same concept, right? If you get something in the mail and and your lawyer's not going to know that because you're not going to go, hey dude, I admitted it to ChatGPT, and nor is your lawyer probably even going to ask that question. So you're going to, try to have some defense and maybe you're down the line and then you get into court and then the counterparty gets through discovery, this admission where you basically say, how do I cover this up? How do you think how do you think a court's going to feel about that? Right. They're going to be pissed at you. Right. And especially if it's a judge, if it's a, we're seeing it every day where people are coming through the door and they've thought about things. And I think it's great, man, because they're more well educated. They understand what's going on. You're still going to need a surgeon to do surgery on you. You could do research on the surgery until the cows come home. You're not going to cut yourself open, right? Now, robots may do it soon, but that's another topic. But, like divorce, right? You're going to go stand in front of a judge and do your own divorce. You may, right? If you don't have the money for a lawyer, you may, but that's probably somebody who is going to go pro se and, be in a difficult situation without ChatGPT. So at least now they have it, right? And I think that's great, right? Because we have all work, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing. You've got commoditized routine stuff it's gone, right? If you're talking about just creating a template document for something that's low stake.
This is something that I really appreciated about some of your content recently were those templates, like a buy-sell agreement, for example, or some mutual NDA. And I think you said if somebody's charging you $400 an hour to draft those things, they should have stopped doing that 5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, LegalZoom came along, how long ago? And everybody said the exact same thing about LegalZoom at that time. Now, this is much more powerful than LegalZoom. I'm not conflating and saying it's not a risk to people in our profession. It is, but you've got 3 layers of work: commoditized routine work, you've got complex work, and then you've got cutting edge work where you're on the fringes of your profession, right? If you're down here in the commoditized routine work, you're toast, right? If you're talking about trying to make money off of low stakes, templatized routine things, big corporations are going to in-house that. Little guys are going to do it themselves. Where you want to be is somewhere in the complex to cutting edge. Cutting edge, obviously, that not everybody can do that, but you want to be moving up, right? And guess who can tell you how to move up, Nick? Guess who can help you elevate your brand?
This is a leading question, Your Honor.
Guess who? The AI can, right? The AI can. I have people call me all the time and be like, hey, how are you using? Dude, don't ask me, right? Don't ask me. Mm-hmm. Tell AI everything about your business and ask AI how to stay ahead of things. Ask AI how to differentiate yourself in marketing. Ask AI every week, every day, other wrinkles of your business that can become more efficient. And you'll stay ahead. And the way I'm picturing business right now, because what's happening is it's evolving so fast, is if you can get leverage in your business to actually work on your business instead of in your business, which is the age-old problem. And I think this sort of helps that to an extent, but obviously you said nights and weekends at the beginning. You're right. Like nights and weekends, this is sort of the classic way of advancing on the business question. But think about Star Trek, circa 20 years ago. Maybe it was 20 years ago. It's 20 years ago for me. I guess some people probably still watch that. But when you hit, say, warp speed, and the ship would go through the galaxy to another that's what's going to happen for some businesses in the marketplace that have the ability and the time to use these tools right now to work on. And they're going to be gone, Nick. And I think what's going to happen, and again, Ask AI probably will tell you better than I will, but I think what will happen is these tools, it makes no sense that Claude and ChatGPT are $200 a month, whatever, for the premium subscription. What would you pay for that? If they said,
Yeah,
we're changing the price structure, what's the most you're willing to pay, Nick?
I don't even know if I should say this out loud, but there's at least another zero on the end of that. So I mean, it's even better. So, and I want to ask you about this internally at SMB. How are you using these tools? But I'll share it this way. So we're a Microsoft shop. We have, SharePoint, Outlook, etc. And so I've been in the Copilot studio. That's where I'm experimenting for tools internally. And given the work that we do, we're having confidential conversations. Everything has to stay in-house enterprise. And I feel more comfortable there. Another segment of our business is working with financial institutions in the US. So banks and credit unions, we do strategic planning, succession planning, et cetera.
Be careful.
Very, very. And if those are our clients, they're more likely to use Microsoft Copilot Studio than, let's say, Claude or Perplexity Computer. They're not going to bring that stuff into their banks and credit unions. So I'm going down that road for a couple of different reasons. Keep the data safe, but also understand our client's experience. Now, on the side, and this is where I want to ask you, apropos to the cost, I set up a Claude team account. There's a minimum 5 seats at $25 a seat. So my monthly nut on that's $125. Put Claude into that arrow into the quiver of some of our consultants. And listen, our consultants these are senior executives, right? These are guys they've been through a couple exits, they've run companies before. And so, they're not AI native, right? So there's two parts to this. Number one is I'm giving all of our team Claude as an assistant to them, but I'm also carving out time internally, and I call them AI lab days, where I block time on the calendar weekday. So this isn't nights and weekends. And, we're dispersed geographically. So we'll gather on a Teams video meeting and we'll just mess around. We'll play with these tools and learn from each other so that they are equipped to take this into the market. And I've got some use cases, but I'll pause right there. And I want to ask, what are the tools that you're using and how are you doing that inside of SMB? Hey, everybody, Nick Anderson again. I hope that you are getting value from this episode of The Value Factory. Thanks for listening in. Now listen, to build a high-performing organization, you must have a talent strategy, a strategy that attracts and retains the right leaders for your culture. Now at One Accord, we help you reduce turnover and align your team's capabilities with your long-term growth goals to ensure that your vision is carried forward effectively. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or our bio and get connected to one of our senior leaders. Now back to the show.
Well, it's evolving rapidly, right? And I think that's your secret sauce right now. And here's the interesting part about all this. Who's AI native? You just said they're not AI native. Who is? Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in this space where like our kids. So we have 4 kids. Youngest is 15. 2 oldest are 19. We got one in the middle, right? And Ariana, my wife, and I, both entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. We were probably user number 250,000 and 250,001 in ChatGPT back in 2022. We were out of the gate early adopters. We talk about all of this at the family dinner table. Our oldest son is building OpenClaw for my wife and me. Awesome. So they are as close as I think we can get. And then when we interact with their peers, or we talking with the girls on my daughter's cheer team, and I ask, well, what are you learning about AI in school? You know the answer to that question. So there is that K-shaped economy is real. And so that's AI native, totally understand. I'm picking up what you're laying down. And I would say that the closest to that are the preteens and early teens right now, for whom ChatGPT is what Google was for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's, now I listen, I, I think that makes my point, right? You've got some teenagers out there and you've got some people who have been, using these tools now for a period of time. But here's the amazing part. Claude Cowork, for example, super powerful tool. If you're not using Claude Cowork for something personally, professionally, you're missing out. It's an amazing tool. Claude Cowork is 70 days old. 70 days old. Claude Cowork was launched, right?
That blows my mind. Just for a minute, that blows my mind.
70 days old. Okay. And so then you say, okay, and since then they've launched, obviously Claude Code existed, but they've added projects to Claude Code and to Claude Cowork and a bunch of things. It's a phenomenal tool. So nobody, the answer, who is AI native? My argument would be nobody, right? You may have some academics that are sitting around that have all day long to literally just play with the tools right now. They don't have practical applications, right? They're in universities and they're goofing around. They're a bunch of dorks that aren't running businesses. Excuse my pejorative there. People who are running businesses, if you're in accounting and you may be in a big corporation and you've got the research, the resources to have an R&D team that's goofing around with that. Okay, that's maybe 5 companies in the US, right? Or a class of companies that, as an individual entrepreneur, you're probably not even competing with anyways, right? And then you've got, sort of these wrapper codes, there's some in our profession, I won't name any names because I don't want to get sued, but they take, they take ChatGPT and they wrap it and then they sell it to Bob. They're selling that to Bob, right? I can pay $20 instead of $5,000 a seat, and use that, right? So my thesis is, if you're in business right now, back to my Star Trek reference, and if you can carve out a couple hours a day, it may not be the true Star Trek thing, but 3 years from now of an hour a day of AI and where this is going to go and asking AI how to implement, you're going to be gone.
Yep.
Gone. And your peers are going to then, and then my suspicion is that, so what's the end game here? Back to my question about what you would pay, and you said put a 0 on it. It actually makes no sense to me. These are the type of tools that I would think would be hidden behind closed doors in casinos, making the odds, and big corporations manipulating them, hedge funds manipulating the markets that you and I on Main Street don't even know exist, right? Because they're that powerful. And they're selling them to us for $20. It doesn't make any sense, right? And those companies, they just, OpenAI just did a capital raise yesterday, and they're promising investors an IRR of at least 17% on that money, right? Promising, guaranteeing it. How do you think they're going to get that money, right? My suspicion is that it's not going to be a $20 product, especially with the cost of the, you tell me, because it sounds like you guys have thought about this a lot, but to me, it's like 5 years from now, you'll be priced out. And if you haven't seized the moment to do the Star Trek thing with your business, you're going to get left behind.
That's a really good perspective. You got me thinking now. So for example, if I imagine our org chart 5 years from today, there's 10 agents on the org chart for every human being. And that that's just an example. I don't know if that number even feels too low. I take someone who is an expert in their domain, and I augment them with specific agents that can do tasks and do work, right? Jensen with NVIDIA says that knowledge is not where the value is. It's actually the do work. That's where agentic AI looks to me like it's going to show up on an org chart. And if I would pay, let's just say market rate in my neighborhood is 125 to 175 for a qualified individual, but I could buy 5 agents for 25,000 a year each. I've got X the output just on an FTE basis, but those agents are maybe 10X more productive. The productivity here makes it so that, just walking it all the way back, my Claude subscription could easily be in the 6 figures.
Yeah.
Easily. But the return on that investment, as you said, if I've done the work now to go into that work drive, is going to be some factor, some, magnitude X, whatever that is. And it's interesting, the perspective that you just gave me. If I'm not going along on that ride, but I show up on the other end at the destination, and I'm looking around and people are now paying 6 figures, but I'm not ready. My business is not equipped. And I think this is where, this is where we come in as One Accord. This is our value proposition. I was trying to figure it out. Like, do we need to become a tech company? Do I need to be selling AI solutions? And the answer is no. The value that we bring is to help Bob, the entrepreneur, get his company ready and go along on that journey so that, at that moment, at that inflection point, because whatever the real number is, there's 5 or 10% of businesses in the US that are kind of on the front edge of this. And that 90, 95, when they catch up to it, or when it catches up to them, right? Are they going to be ready?
Yeah.
And
you could see an argument too, where you say, hey, for the next couple of years, One Accord will help people prepare for sale. And that's going to be a lot of sort of positioning your messaging around being able to, build off of what Bob did and sort of implement AI and sort of marketing facade about being AI enabled, whether that's true or not. And then at some point in the future, you'll, it'll have to be substantive. And then at some point after that, it won't be obtainable. Bob shows up with his business and he hasn't done anything in AI. If by 2030, Bob hasn't touched AI, I don't think Bob's catching up. Right. I don't think Bob's
that's
just
right.
buying. He's not
Bob's
just
the dog chasing the car, and the car stops. Right. That's it. So
yeah.
I had a real time. This is just a week or two ago. Bob and I are having a conversation, and Bob's got a great business, and this is real life, right? He's got a great business, and he's going to transact at some point in the next 18 months. Could be 12 months. He's getting ready, and he says to me, yeah, I got these guys coming in. They're going to pitch me an AI solution. They say it's going to automate a lot of the back end. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. How much, what's the scope? We kind of get into the details, and it's a $250,000 project. Yeah. Okay, good. And he starts talking about what it's going to do, but also Bob has been ahead of the curve. He's got a lot of automation already. He's got a lot of systems in place, tech-based system. Anyhow, I said to Bob, don't do it. Don't do it. Number one, your banker is going to be able to argue that those are one-time non-recurring expenses. So we can add that back to EBITDA. So you're like enterprise value calculations. That's not the problem here. What the problem is this company probably hasn't done this more than 10 times. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking more than twice. You're going to be paying them for their education. It's going to take way longer. It's not going to work. It's going to be a huge distraction. And what you need to do is focus on getting your company ready, getting your leadership team ready. You don't want to distract them. Secondly, that's actually meat on the bone for the acquirer. Let them make that decision. If you implement this solution, you've taken that optionality away from the potential buyer, and you might have limited your buyer pool. That's a really specific, timely, like right now, where I'm saying to Bob, don't do it.
Well, and when you think about lower middle market businesses, I can't tell you how many times I've had a client buying a lower middle market business that's in roofing or, surveying or, whatever, Main Street style business, and they've developed some proprietary software or an app. And the buyer's like, I'll take it, but I don't really want it, right? And if you're going to go, my first thought when you said 250,000 was what a racket, right? Because you're right. Again, nobody is AI native right now. We are learning daily. Claude is 70 days old, right? And so you could build out something that, spend 250 grand and have it be obsolete by the time the project is done. I wouldn't make that investment. And it's sort of, there was a viral post. I got in a little bit of trouble. The guy actually blocked me over it. But he tweeted this article about the Claude native law firm. Right. And I was like, okay, I'll bite. A bunch of people sent it to me. They're like, Eric, what do you think? Claude native law firm. I'm like, yeah, I love Claude. Let me take a look. Right. And his first example was the lead-in example was using Claude in an M&A deal. So I was like, oh, cool. That's my bread and butter. But as I'm reading the example, it's one of those like clearly AI written hypotheticals. It's just like so preposterous that like only AI could make it up. It's like, and it was so absurd. And that's hard for me, right? When you see that at the beginning of an article, you're like, okay, credibility loss. What's really going on here, right? And And, and so I retweeted it after, like, I didn't at first. I was like, I'm not getting into this because I don't want to be negative, whatever. After being tagged in it, like 9 hours went by. I finally wrote this post. I was like, hey, M&A practitioners, like, read this, look at the example. Tell me if I'm being a jerk, because maybe I am. Maybe this is a real example and I'm just haven't had my cup of coffee, whatever. And everybody was like, no, this is just not a factually, logistically, it's just not accurate, right? It's just bullshit. So then you sort of dig a little bit deeper, right? And the guy, and I'm attacking this guy right now. That's terrible, but it's true, right? He had 10 months of experience at a major law firm. Then he started his own shop. Very smart guy, went to Yale Law School, tremendously well-educated dude. But that's not enough experience to sort of know what you're doing substantively in the law, right? 10 months at a big shop, you're just figuring out how to work, right? And then, you're trying to say that you've reinvented the practice of law with a product that at that time, Claude was 45 days old and the legal plugin was 30, right? And so you're trying to say with 10 months of experience and a 30-day-old product that you've reinvented a, age-old profession like that. That's sort of emblematic of where we're at with AI and where people's thinking is that you're going to run into consultants that will charge you $250,000 to do a project that they've never done before. And they're going to learn on the job. And by the time the job is done, it's probably obsolete. And who are these consultants? Do they have 10 months of experience in your industry? And if they really, why aren't they building their own business, right? Why aren't they using it in their own business because you could Star Trek your way to, $100 million enterprise with the capabilities here. So, I wouldn't say grifting because that's too strong of a word. I would say over exuberance, right now about implementation. Justify, like, there should be a lot of justified exuberance, but not to the extent that if you're Bob, you go and make a, multiple six-figure investment in some proprietary build out right now. Like, start with a $20 subscription while there's still $20.
Love it, man. I just want to keep talking to you. This is good.
Yeah.
Eric, how do people find you?
I'm at SMB Attorney on X. Eric Pacifici at smblaw.group is our website. Happy to help out in any way we can. I'm having these conversations. It's funny that you and I talked about AI for 40 minutes because I feel like that's all anybody in business wants to talk about right now. So if there's other lawyers out there, people looking to buy and sell businesses, happy to connect and be helpful.
And SMB, so you did 123 deals last year. What's your hopeful?
It's a great question. We'd like to grow. I think our conservative goal is 140 based on headcount. Right now, through the first quarter, I'm trying to look here. I think we're on pace and we've got a number. We've got about 60 deals in process right now, about 20 set to close in the next 30 days. So that would put us on let's see here. Close 361 now for 1.7 billion. And we've closed 25 through the first quarter. We've got about 6 days here. I think we've got probably a half dozen to a dozen more set to close in the next week. So on pace to have our best quarter ever. So yeah, it's fun to build. It's anxiety provoking in the day of AI, but we're having a lot of fun over it.
So good. There are some folks that I want to introduce you to. We'll do that offline.
Awesome.
I think you're a good guy.
Thank you.
And the world needs more good guys helping out the entrepreneurs. I would encourage anybody listening that's interested to get to know Eric, follow him on X. And this is where I think the world is today is you show up here the same way you show up there, transparent, consistent. And so, we get to qualify and filter out the folks that we want to work with pretty simply when we just say, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is the way I think. And it's no surprise that you're attracting a lot of people in from my perspective, because you've got, I don't know, it's real.
Well, I appreciate that. X is fun because you learn how people think, right? It's not pretty pictures. It's not how well you're dressed. I mean, you're literally, used to be 180 characters, or you got 280 characters. You get to tell people what you think, how you think. And over time, you start to go, hey, that guy's a jerk, or that guy's, or I like that guy. I'd have a beer with that guy, or that guy's smart. He's always saying something useful, so it's an interesting way to get to know people for sure.
Good. All right, Eric. Well, thanks for coming on The Value Factory. Look forward to the next one.
Thanks for having me.